So, it's been a minute since we've had real, tangible, meaty Ranger news to dig into. And yes, I'm somewhat late to the party here, but I figured I'd get my thoughts out there anyway beyond throwing out a singular tweet about the topic, since that's kind of what we do here. And then we'll talk about a couple channel details towards the end of this video, since y'all sort of deserve that after my scattershot production schedule this past, well, 2 years really. Anyways, let's dive right in. So, as most of us know by now, it's been reported that Hasbro has turned to Disney Plus to revive the franchise by way of yet another reboot, this time via a series and not a film. I've gone on record saying I'll believe it when I see it, so we'll see if this news becomes outdated faster than back when Power Rangers 2 was almost a reality. Disney won't own the franchise as they did from Wild Force to RPM, so we're not going to suddenly go back to all that for those unclear on how that arrangement will work. It'll be more like when Cartoon Network aired Pokemon episodes in the States, because just airing it on Kids WB didn't make much sense to the Pokemon company. And then they were able to hang on to their CN contract after Kids WB went under in 2006, so diversifying their network coverage ended up working out until that contract eventually expired too. But that bit of TV history is a whole rabbit hole that we don't have time for today. Point being, Disney will have some say, but not a ton of say, as to how Hasbro will manage this new project, which, incidentally, isn't that far removed from how much influence Disney wanted to have on the franchise in the first place. And for better or worse, but usually for better, the showrunners really got to express themselves in that era for that reason. And speaking of showrunners, that really should be the focus of this sort of entry into a conversation until we have a lot more details about what we're getting. I figure, in all likelihood, that it'll be a show with the look and feel of MMPR, updated for 21st century sensibilities. But beyond that, it's how the showrunners themselves choose to interpret the material they're given. Jonathan E. Steinberg and Dan Schatz are in line to run the show, while also serving as the writers and producers. For those of you unfamiliar with the pair of names, they produced Black Sails and Jericho over a decade ago, and the new Percy Jackson series much more recently. I've seen some of the first two and none of the third. I'll need to rectify that at some point, since I think it's reasonable to assume that any new PR season will take a lot more cues from their sensibilities there, relative to anything else they've helmed. That said, I've talked to enough Percy Jackson enjoyers to get some sense of that project. And I've been told it's perfectly fine, all things considered. But what I really wanted to pay attention to when looking them up for this script is their mentality on showrunning. Because we have at least some reason to believe that said mentality will be allowed to shine through unless Hasbro gets way too hands-on, which, barring one and only one season of Beast Morphers, is basically a death nail. And just from what I've been able to gauge and get a sense of, as a team, Steinberg and Schatz have a lot you can latch onto. They focus a great deal on the process of casting and how people come into, fit into, and flourish in their roles. So at minimum, this future series will probably feature Rangers who you'll actually like seeing on screen. If they get their way, which is still a pretty big if given all the cooks in the kitchen, we might actually see some of the character magic that was fairly prominent in the last actual Disney era, but with vastly more expensive equipment and no Sentai footage, of course. And as a person who proudly coined the Power Rangers are people first mantra, that obviously means a whole lot to me thinking about what this series could potentially be. What I also appreciated from hearing them talk about Percy Jackson is how curious they seemed, how inquisitive they seemed, and how they prioritized getting a grip on and deep understanding of the world they were writing for. There's a lot that can be said and has been said about Rick Riordan's involvement in the Percy Jackson series, and some might even call it over-involvement, but they worked through it. The closest thing PR has to that, and it's not even really that close by comparison, is Jonathan Sakor, but he hasn't been heard from in eons and obviously won't be involved in this project. So given that, there is even more reason to believe their take on this franchise will largely be the one we see. Now, that could translate in a number of different ways with Power Rangers, because it's not based in Greek lore and the myriad of stories thereof. PR lore is kind of nonsense, and if we're on this ride, then we've all basically accepted that, either tacitly or otherwise. But Kyle Higgins is a great example of someone who came into all that mess, tried to make sense of it, and wrote stories that really showed a deeper understanding of a character like Tommy than most writers would have. So if this pair can do something similar, though it'd probably look and feel very different from the Drakon days, I'd sign up for that. And really, that's all you need to make Power Rangers good, if not great. Bring together a couple of absolute goobers who your viewers can't help but fall in love with and root for, and just let them go. Hopefully that means that a couple of Cobra Kai alumni will be up for some of these roles, not just because they can all fight now, but because as actors portraying their characters, there haven't been many teen-centric shows these past few years that has done it better than they have, within the lane they chose to drive in, a lane this future series could easily occupy. And that, in my opinion, should be the biggest focus here. You don't need to spend 17 plus hours recontextualizing the morphing grid nobody cares, you don't need to dive face first into socio-political commentary you don't have the knowledge to comment on, and you don't need some cameo or cheeky lore drop to trick us into thinking we're having a good time. Make the show fun, make the character moments matter, and the rest will mostly sort itself out. But again, this will still be a Hasbro production, a company that has barely been able to get their toys on shelves, let alone plot out a true vision for this very expensive IP. So there are more than a few reasons to be skeptical as well. So those are my quick thoughts on how John E. Steinberg and Dan Schatz can save a franchise that has been desperate for a savior, basically since Dino Charge came and went. But I really did think John Entwistle was gonna be that before his PR project quietly died. So obviously take all of these details with a grain of salt until we get casting decisions, a plot synopsis, and God willing, a trailer. And now, a couple channel updates. Some of you know this if you follow me on Twitter, but Toei has decided that nobody is allowed to see my Ten Gokaiger review anymore, at least not in its heavily edited state. So I'm planning on re-releasing that video, or it might have already been dropped by the time this upload shows up in your feed, with a lot, and I mean a lot, of this still image in place of Ten Gokaiger footage to keep their copyright bots off my ass. It's unideal, trust me, I know, but what sucks more is that I don't have a ton of faith that even a counter notification will work anymore, which is the final action you can take after disputing and appealing a claim. The fact is, YouTube isn't obligated to send that notification to the claimant, even if you've done your homework, and even if you put up a solid case for why you'd risk being sued, and I never have been, for the sake of a video that will at best make me like $20 in ad revenue. Why this is the case with 10 Gokaiger, while all of my other 4 Gokaiger vids have not bothered them in the slightest, and have all been up for over a year, is a question only a higher power could answer. And here's the real crazy thing, y'all. All things considered, I'm still one of the lucky ones. I've seen entire channels get nuked from orbit for much less, while companies like Toei get to abuse power and scare creators who have next to no recourse anymore and get to walk away scot-free. But we'll save that rant for another day. What that all means is, for the time being, I'll be staying clear of mainline Toei properties and doing a lot more pre-upload work to test the waters for new video ideas. Apologies to those who really wanted me to dive into another full Sentai season, especially if you're a fellow Jasmine fan, cause realistically, that was probably going to be the next one. There will be one sort of exception to that rule though. After 10,000 years, it's finally time to start digging back into the one that started it all. And, you know, maybe we'll also get to Zeo and Turbo too. No, I didn't forget them. Yes, they will be included. That project will, of course, take a minute or 5, so in the meantime, I wanted to take another stab at highlighting other talented PR creators. And folks have been telling me about Power Rangers Unworthy for a hot minute, so I guess that'll be the next thing we talk about. So, until whenever the next video drops, thanks for watching.